So with Bitcoin and Ethereum, the holders of that token don't have any representation in the system. There's a layer of indirection where the hash power holders have the representation. And I personally think it's better to have that more pure representation where the token gives you some say in how the system's governed, not through this indirection of hash power, which also, by the way, is extremely wasteful.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Some people have convoluted explanations. To me, they're mental gymnastics about why power consumption matters to secure a blockchain. I don't think it's true. I
But
think
it's
what's
not, isn't, and it's not scalable though, right?
what's that?
That type of hash energy usage is not scalable to a global level.
Yeah, I mean, we are trying to. I personally think we need to have better energy schemes, and so throwing in this huge market for consuming tons of energy isn't a good thing
Okay.
in general, in my opinion. And you know, people do all kinds of stuff, like they go get renewable energy, hydroelectric energy, uh, you know, probably a lot of solar mining happening, but I don't know. It just seems like there's a more pure form, you know, there's a more pure protocol here that we can distill down to that gives us the properties. Like decentralization isn't an end in and of itself, it's a means to an end. The mean to have higher accountability in society, uh, more access to opportunity, in my opinion. Like there shouldn't be, you know, infrastructure of the market, of Wall Street, of politics shouldn't be these onion layers that are highly inaccessible to everyday people. We should have more pure systems for these institutions. And to me, that's what we can do with this technology. So if it's decentralized enough and there are means to of recourse when things go bad, in a system like EOS, let's say, like, you know, there's all these cartels forming or something bad happens, like, well, you know, there's all kinds of recourse for that too. So you can fork the chain and change the distribution. You can fork the chain and create your own constitution. Like we could see all these parallel EOS experiments at play that have different governance structures. I think what Dan and Block One are doing with Constitution 2.0 is a good step based on what we've seen with Constitution 1.0, which is trying to reduce the scope of what the arbitration system can be used for to a more objective level. Because right now, like phrases like, you know, don't be violent to each other, how does an arbitrator really know if some other member was violent to another member? Like, you know, there's too much room for subjectivity on arbitrators. So what they're doing with Constitution 2.0 is trying to make the OS, which, you know, EOS is basically a decentralized application operating system. The OS should have a reduced, very objective governance layer, and we could layer in more governance abstractions on top of that. And what that means is we don't have to have a moral compass encoded into our constitution that everyone globally needs to agree on, because we already know based on different cultures that's probably not going to happen. But if we have like a good base level of governance at the system layer, so at the EOS core protocol layer, and then people can build up their own abstractions of governance on top of that, that means, you know, these different governance systems can coexist on EOS together. And so I think that's some of where the discussion's gone there. I think it's a move in the right direction, and, you know, explicitly putting things in there to hold block producers accountable to they can't take actions out of turn is important, because we want EOS to be a governed blockchain that only takes means to change the history if the intention of whatever the result of that history was unintended for, according to Ricardian contracts, which are human readable, machine parsable contracts that kind of read like prose, like how a regular contract would sound. So the Ricardian contracts let us capture the intention of our smart contract, of the code, and then the arbitrators need to rule within that scope, which is very well defined, and not be like, ruling on subjective things that are, just there's a lot of different disagreements about or something.
And then leave a lot of that, the more specific things to the application layer, right? Where the developers can kind of put and scope their whole frame of reference for how they want to do things, right?
Yep. Because every smart contract on EOS should have a parallel sort of Ricardian contract along with it that states these are what all the functions are intended to do. And then that gives us the scope. So if there's a bug in the code, which is almost impossible for there not to be,
right,
at some point in time in some code, we can be like, oops, that $30 million hack due to one minor software oversight can be reversed because we want this to be a chain friendly to business and one that's, trying to capture in essence what its community members are trying to achieve and not such a sharp edge where it's like, oops, I accidentally locked up $300 million forever, which I think also happened on Ethereum.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like where this is going because it makes it more comfortable for existing institutions to come in, and that's good because to me, EOS is a Trojan horse. It's going to sneak up. It's going to spread its tentacles out through all these different governments, industry, society, because it offers such useful innovations for them, like whether it's accountability or efficiency gains or having public records of things. Like there's a lot of utilization to come from this. So yeah, let's make it friendly for the world to come on board, because then the revolution happened peacefully overnight without a drop of blood being shed.
Right.
So
what are your thoughts about, there talks about Bitfinex being, one of the bigger token holders or BPs, and how do you see that playing out? I know some in the community are concerned about Bitfinex and actually some of the other 21 that we don't even know who they are. Like, so is this Constitution 2.0 going to really change the power structure or the seat? I shouldn't say power structure, but the seat at that witness table for the BPs?
It's a good question. So as far as exchanges being block producers go, I think as long as they're not voting on behalf of their customers, so if they're not allowing their customers to vote and they're just using that stake to vote, they have a few problems. Well, under the current constitution, that's illegal.
That's a violation, right?
It's a violation of vote producer system call, which says you have to have permission of the beneficial owner of the EOS tokens to actually vote on their behalf. So that opens them up to the risk of arbitration. And then there's a 3-day staking period. So if there's a run on their exchange and all the tokens are staked, then they're going to be caught like in the crosshairs because all of their users will be like, why can't I move my stuff? So that's, ideally that staking period should be longer, I think, to make it even harder for exchanges to flip back and forth between staking and unstaking. But those are a couple reasons why I don't think it's a big deal. They also have, a lot of these exchanges do have trust, maybe not Bitfinex. Bitfinex has PR problems. Some people trust Bitfinex. But, if you look at what they're doing, they are building out smart contracts. They've got EOS Finex. They're building tools on EOS. They do have a lot of capital to invest in that. I don't think that allocating block rewards to Bitfinex is the best idea because, in my opinion, first of all, we want wider voting distribution. Like, not everyone can be inactive. That's guaranteed. There's only 21 of them. But what we do have control of is having a wider distribution of standbys.
Right.
More teams that are incentivized to keep their nodes running, to continue building value for EOS for their campaign. And so what I'd like to see is more standbys, because that means we're paying more contributors to contribute, basically. Except for in the cases where we're not backing a team, it's just like some block producer that voted themselves in, which, like you mentioned, there's identities that aren't well known that have a high position,
right?
That could probably be like just one whale voting them in.
Yeah.
Right now, basically, you need a whale backing to get paid. Like our voter diversity for EOS Detroit, there's this BP tool site that has a voter diversity metric.
Yeah, you showed me that.
Yep, there it is.
All right, so
that voter diversity is actually defined if you click the pie at the top.
Okay, so guys, here's the site that Rob is referring to. I'll make sure I link this in the description of this video. But so if we click the pie, the voter diversity.
Yeah, this gives us a good measure using the Gini-Simpson diversity index of trying to determine if how many people are supporting a given block producer. So when you get a whale vote, your voter diversity decreases a lot, because they're like the majority of, or they may be a huge portion of the stake that's voting for you. But this site will give us information about like what accounts are allocating votes. Like if you hover over any of those colored squares, it'll tell you which account cast the vote. So you can see all those blues are actually the Bitfinex proxies. And if you go down to the table at the bottom and sort by voter diversity percentage, you'll see EOS Detroit is actually number 11. So we have a lot of small voters voting for us. We just don't have any whale support yet, which is why we're like number 90 on the roster.
Gotcha.
But, this can change overnight. We saw a big shakeup yesterday.
Yep.
More people come, unlock their stake from the Genesis block, vote with it. I know Block 1 just announced they're going to start voting.
Yep, they sure did. They sure did.
That's going to be interesting, because that will, create more, another whale, basically the biggest whale will start voting. I'm not sure what their strategy will be.
Yeah, because they have, as you stated, 10% of the tokens, right? And we only have currently about 27% voting going on in the network,
right?
Of all tokens.
I don't think they have to vote with all 10% though. So I may be wrong. This would be something I could look into, but I know they should be able to delegate stake to another account.
Yeah.
That transfers voting capability to or not.
Gotcha.
If there's a way that they can proxy just a small portion of their vote instead of the whole vote, that would allow them to have a voice, and a sizable one at that, without totally overruling the entire system.
Right. So as we have this list up here, we're looking at EOS Detroit at 96.1% diversity. Tell us a little bit more about EOS Detroit. I was very excited to meet some of you guys here at the Detroit Tech Week last week, and I was actually out at Red Door yesterday, and got a chance to meet Haru. Had a nice conversation with him. So tell us about EOS Detroit. You guys got a nice team, well-diverse team. You guys are trying to do a lot of great things in the community, and leverage EOS with that. So yeah, just kind of give us a rundown on EOS Detroit, man. Awesome team you guys have.
So we formed the team in March. We've been growing since then. Just sort of one night I woke up in like fever sweats, and I was like, I got to do this. And so I started bringing the team together. We've got a strong team of 9. And really what our vision is to enable a new era of equitable internet services. So we think decentralized applications are the future. We think EOS is going to be the first protocol that really can dive into that market. So we're focused there. And what we want to do is bring EOS to everyone. So, we want to explain EOS in a way that people can understand and onboard them to the ecosystem of decentralized apps that are currently being built and will be released soon, as well as building our own decentralized apps. And our platform is a block producer because we're a scrappy team. You know, we're not independently wealthy. A block producer, I know how to run a block producer. I've run it on previous delegated proof of stake chains. I know EOS is a whole order of magnitude larger, but we think that we have what it takes to perform the role of a block producer and then use our BP funds to fund our other projects, so our own decentralized application development and our community outreach.
Right.
And so community outreach is like, we're working on getting a partnership with Grand Circus to run a decentralized application workshop. So
nice.
Planning a conference. We just sponsored the Crypto Cafe at Detroit Startup Week and handed out info packets so people can start to understand what EOS is and just be exposed to it in a friendly and inviting way. So we're really working hard to think, how can we create the playbook for getting people interested in decentralized apps, in cryptocurrency and token economics. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think that this technology will enable so much good for communities that can own their own infrastructure, communities that have a seat at the table, that can self-govern. And, you know, let's face it, like, Detroit needs some alternative solutions to help everybody prosper. And I think that we can work directly in the community with community leaders to spec and build tools for them to empower them, and also to give people economic opportunity. And that's why we're focused on building out a MeshNet incentives decentralized application for MeshNets here locally. Mm-hmm. So we're working on getting partnerships with local MeshNets. We started speccing out our own decentralized app. We're planning on releasing a white paper in the coming months.
Nice.
Targeting the end of July, but it'll probably be August.
Okay.
We understand that it's a complex project and that it, you know, we understand how to do a proper software product development lifecycle too. So we're not trying to pitch it too hard and like leak a bunch of information out about it, because we're focused on building it first and then going to market at the right time. So if you support EOS Detroit with your vote, you're supporting a diverse team, one that values aesthetics and design and is planning to bring EOS to everybody. We understand the context in which this technology has been built. Brandon Lovejoy on my team is also from BitShares forums. We met.
Nice.
He actually interviewed Dan a few years ago. So he did a mini document, BitShares peer-to-peer road trip, which is like a 20-minute long video, and interviewed Dan, and we kind of like went around, and we realized back then in BitShares that it's about the people. We're building this technology for people. Mm-hmm. We need to get away from the Tron aesthetics and the jargon and figure out how to make this stuff meaningful for everyday people. And that's what we want to do with EOS Detroit. That's our aim. And we believe, you know, in the long run, we're essentially trying to seed a new industry here in Detroit. You know, we'd love to see many companies flourish here, working on their own decentralized apps. And we'd like to provide the tools to train people to do that. So, you know, we don't need to be the only EOS startup here. Ideally, EOS Detroit is we'll plant the seed to create many new innovations here locally. And the great thing is it's all open source. So the projects we deploy here locally and pilot, we will put our code up for open source on our GitHub or somewhere else, some repository, and enable other communities around the world to leverage that. Nice. So not only are we bringing people into EOS, which increases the value of the EOS network, but we're also trying to contribute back technology too. And, you know, we've gotten a little bit of a late start here, so we're working through a lot of business formational stuff. We know that this is a marathon, not a sprint, so we're not concerned with our position today. I mean, we always want it to go up, but votes can shuffle at any time. We're just going to put our heads down and keep working.
Nice.
And I think that that's the best way to prove our value to the community. So we're in this for as long as we can be. I think we have at least a year to really take a stab at this. And, I feel pretty confident that we will earn a standby position at the very least. And, the competition is fierce, and there's a lot of great VP teams, and, the competition is great. So we're cooperating and we're competing, and there's, in general, a good, good, clean, fun kind of feel. And, so we understand, like, we don't have millions of dollars. We don't have a huge, well of capital to help us. But what we do have are great talent and experience and a great vision, I think. So I feel like we can bring a lot to EOS, and hopefully the voters will feel the same.
Yeah, man. You guys get out there if you have tokens that you want to definitely vote with, man. Check out EOS Detroit.
Our producer name is EOSIO Detroit. It's the same as our Twitter handle. Right. So that's if you do want to allocate your vote to us, EOSIO Detroit.
Nice. And also, man, what's the threshold to be a standby? Is it 51 or 52?
Someone told me the other day that it was 0.49% of the vote. So that threshold is actually dynamic.
Yeah.
And it depends on the allocation. So if the top 21 BPs have the majority of the stake voting for them, that actually will reduce the number of standbys. That's actually why we just collaborated to draft a joint statement with a few other block producers that are also backup block producers. We drafted this, based on the zeitgeist, kind of the discussion around, these big wealthy entities are earning the BP, voting themselves into the BP slots when there's all of these people who have a lot of merit and contributions that are sort of left in the dust. So we drafted a joint statement called Keep EOS Decentralized. And we just posted that today, and it's a voter education piece. So the idea here is, the voters need to understand that if they spread their vote around and distribute it to more block producers, then we'll have more standbys. That means we have more teams being paid to continue to build value for EOS, as well as more, less concentration of EOS at the top, which means that the top gets powerful slower, right? Because we don't want the top to be making like 10 grand a day. I think that's a bit ludicrous. So if we could take some money from the top BPs and allocate it to standbys at the end of that tail, we'll have more standbys, so there's more nodes ready to drop into the active roster if something goes wrong. Like, things that can go wrong. Well, you've lost the support of voters for something you said or did. Your nodes are down for some reason, like your data center blew up or whatever happened.
Right.
So there's reasons why actives might come offline. You just quit one day. You just said, I'm done, walked away and left everything running. So there's reasons why we should expect that active roster to shuffle, and it's healthy to shuffle.
Absolutely.
Like after a few years, maybe we should just unvote a top VP just so they don't earn too much EOS and have too much voting power. These are things that we'll discuss over time.
And it will evolve, and that's great, man. We should be always looking to improve and change for the better. So I'm hoping that will continue with EOS. I'm seeing that happen already. So we're evolving early in the stage. And man, best of luck to EOS Detroit. Rob Consdorf, I hope I said that correctly. I'll link that. I'll link that.
Call me Rob Rigo. That's my
Rob Rigo. Yeah, that's your Twitter handle, right?
Rob Rigo. I'm basically Rob Rigo everywhere. So
okay.
That. And I linked you that Keep Securing a Decentralized and Prosperous EOS joint article.
Great.
We translated to Chinese, Korean, and Spanish. One thing we're really big on at EOS Detroit is inclusion and making sure that our messages are available to the global community. So we've set up a translation pipeline so we can translate our works into many languages.
Nice.
We support Chinese on the site already, but we plan to add more languages there too, because this is a global movement that does happen at a hyper-local level, and we can we need to be cognizant of that global diversity. There's differences of culture, of just the way things are done, and I think it's really important to try to strive to learn more about that, and also make sure everyone can hear the message regardless of what their language is. Nice. So,
well, again, man, Rob, I appreciate you coming on, chatting with me, and definitely look to have you and the team come on in the future and give us updates. Again,
well, thanks for having me on, Blood. I really appreciate it. It's been
absolutely
a pleasure talking to you, and we'll definitely have a lot coming out here in the next couple months. So
nice. I'm excited, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much.
Okay, man.
All right. Have a good one.